We have a great session planned here for multimodal tourism, which is a component of passenger rail, of course. Economic development, it's a little bit of everything combined. Um, I want to introduce our moderator, Senator Ron Taylor from Sun Valley, Idaho, which does not currently have a rail connection, but is a serious tourist destination in the Northwest and could and could very soon have a rail spur reestablished up to the ski town of Ketchum. I'll let Senator Taylor say more about the history of rail in Sun Valley in Idaho and his thoughts on multimodal tourism opportunities. And then we'll invite up our panel, both virtual across the world and here in person. Senator Taylor, please.
Good morning. I am incredibly honored to be standing up here right now. And how many of you went to the Heritage Center last night? I felt like a little kid. That was so much fun. Thank you. So I've been asked to talk about tourism in the Wood River Valley in Idaho. And before I start with my story, I would just like to acknowledge that the area I'm talking about is the ancestral homelands of the Shoshone, the Bannock, and the Lamhi people. Now, going forward in the late 1800s, the Wood River Valley was a mining area. It had a small town of Bellevue and a Haley and Ketchum, and we mined for silver and for lead. Or in order to get all of that ore out of the valley, Union Pacific put a spur line, the Oregon Short Track, came up into the Wood River Valley. It was a great way to move all the ore back out of the valley. Early 1900s, the US government decided that silver and lead weren't as profitable as they wanted, so the price dropped. Ketchum went from a population of about 2,000 people down to about 200. The industry collapsed. What to do with the railroad? Our Basque people came in and used the railroad to help transport sheep up and down the valley to the different grazing areas. We still transport sheep up and down the valley. We just do it now with herders walking them up and down. If you want some fun, come up in October for the Trailing of the Sheep Festival. You'll get a chance to play sheep herder and walk around and try, and it's fun. Let me tell you, if you can herd cats, you can herd sheep. They go wherever you want them to. So as the Great Depression happened in 1929, a young man named Averell Harriman with the Union Pacific Railroad, he was the chairperson at the time, had this great idea that he wanted to create North America's very first destination ski resort. And he wanted to model it after the European resorts. So he looked around and he found an Austrian ski instructor named Felix Schafgatz. And he was a count. And he got him over here to the US and he said, I want you to travel throughout the West and find me a place we can do this resort. So the count, he looked everywhere, couldn't find anything. And he decided one day he would head up into the Wood River Valley. He took that spur line up there, ended up in Ketchum, and said, wow, this is the spot. It meets all three criteria that Mr. Harriman gave me. It has ample snow. It has nice, clean slopes for skiing, and it's serviced by the Union Pacific Railroad. So there's a little bit of self-service there from Mr. Harriman. But as a result of that, in early 1936, they decided that they would build a resort there. And when we talk about permitting reform, this is a great example of why we need to reform some of our permits. They broke ground on the resort in May of 1936, opened the resort in December of 36 with two large buildings, one of them built completely out of cement that looks like wood, and they had runs on 3 different mountains. We also had America's very first chairlift. So that's what Averill Harriman and the Union Pacific Railroad did. Now, what do you do with this resort? You need to get people there. So who do you get there? Averill reached out to Hollywood's elite. We had the likes of Claudette Colbert, Gary Cooper, who else was there? Boy, you name it. We had John Wayne. All of the big names came up. They would get on the train in Shoshone, take the train into Ketchum, and then get on a bus to take the mile trip up to Sun Valley. Averill even went so far as to let Ernest Hemingway live in a suite of rooms in the newly constructed lodge for free, with the stipulation that he would spend the evening hours mingling with all of the guests and making them feel like they were welcomed. While Ernest was there, he penned For Whom the Bell Tolls, a small book. You might have heard of it. I don't know. And his typewriter still sits in that suite of rooms today. That's how Sun Valley started. It started as a destination resort built after the ones in Europe, and it brought huge, big names there. 104 years later, the train is no longer there, and the majority of that path is now paved over, and it serves as a pedestrian path. So in the summertime, we have bikers, walkers, dry land skate skiers trying to get ready for the winter season. In the winter season, our rec district keeps it groomed for cross-country skiing, or skate skiing and classic skiing. And it's great for tourists, but it doesn't move an awful lot of people. And in our little valley, the county itself is 24,000 people. The valley is maybe close to 10,000 people. We have a 2-lane highway that accommodates approximately 17,000 vehicle trips a day. And in order for our transportation department to deal with that, they've decided to make it a 4-lane highway. So during the construction this summer, we had 2 to 2.5 hour delays for a 13-mile stretch of highway. And it really got people upset, but it also started people thinking about maybe we can have another form of transportation back in the valley. So there is a thought process going on now that maybe with that existing right of way, with our pedestrian path, how can we bring in another way to move people? And light rail would be a great way to do that. I don't think it will happen in my lifetime, but the door has been opened and it's giving us a chance to think about how we can move more people. Widening the highway is not going to cut down on the congestion. And if we can cut back on the amount of vehicle trips, we might be able to keep our valley as pristine as it has always been. So that's kind of the story right there of Sun Valley and tourism by train. We'd love to get it back. And I was saying just a little bit ago to Brandon, if we could get everybody to go over to the Heritage Museum and see those trains, I'll bet you we could make a fundamental shift in the way people were thinking about trains, because that was pretty darned exciting. So our panel today consists of Meghan Clemens. She's with Alaska Railroad. We have Thomas Eastmond with Dreamstar Lines and Hannah McDonnell from Gloucestershire Community Rail Partnership. And I'd like to take a minute to introduce Meghan. She's online, is that correct, Tom? Awesome. Hi, Meghan. Meghan she's a lifelong Alaskan, and she graduated from East High in Anchorage. After completing her degree at Northwestern University, she returned to Alaska to work in the tourism and nonprofit sectors. She joined the marketing team at the Alaska Railroad in 2013. Meghan completed her MBA from the UAA in 2018 and currently serves as the railroad's External Affairs Director, a role that provides her the opportunity to engage with communities, businesses, and trade groups across her state. When she's not working on the railroad, she enjoys hiking and fishing and skiing with her husband and her dog. Please welcome Meghan.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Is my sound coming through okay today? All right, okay, I see a thumbs up. Thank you for that. Good morning, appreciate the warm welcome, and delighted to be able to speak with you all today about travel and tourism by train. Certainly regret that I'm not able to be there in person, but delighted to share a little bit more about the Alaska Railroad. And to do that, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here to be able to have a few slides. All right, and looks like we're good to go there. So I'm fortunate to work for the Alaska Railroad as a lifelong Alaskan. It's certainly an iconic institution in our state, and the opportunity to represent the railroad and what it means for Alaskans and for visitors to our state has been a lot of fun. Start briefly just with talking on safety. For those of you who are in the rail industry, you know this is such an important focus for the operations of rail. It's something we take really seriously, and we think about it in a number of ways. First and foremost, always a focus on safety for our employees across the organization. Anytime you're working with heavy equipment and an active rail corridor, that's something that we really want to emphasize. Certainly, public awareness is something we take seriously. And we participate in the nationwide Operation Lifesaver campaign, as well as more targeted local outreach, always looking to educate the public on the importance of keeping a safe distance from the railroad tracks and not trespassing in those active corridors. And then
Megan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are seeing the presenter view. I'm not sure if you wanted to change that.
Oh, gotcha.
Otherwise, we're going to be seeing one step ahead of you the whole time.
One step ahead. Let me see if I am PowerPoint savvy enough to be able to, maybe if we click off of presenter view, have we now, that looks like it's coming up all right now. All right, thank you for that.
That works. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then again, going back to just wrapping up our comments on safety, separate and apart from sort of the day-to-day operations of the train, we also participate in emergency response exercises with different local agencies, first responders, as well as the U.S. military. In some cases, if there's an angle for kind of a train response, that's something that we're always happy to be able to participate in. And jumping ahead to that slide that you got a bit of a sneak preview for, our mission statement, this informs everything that we do at the Alaska Railroad. So, for us, it's really a focus on providing safe and reliable rail transportation services, as well as real estate services. Like many railroads, we do have some real estate reserves, and the revenue generated from those opportunities help to support our capital investment to ensure that we're able to continue operating trains that help drive economic development opportunities for the state of Alaska. A quick background on the railroad for those who might not be familiar with us. We are an independent public corporation that is owned by the state of Alaska. That's been true since the mid-1980s, originally dating back to the construction of the Alaska Railroad. We were originally constructed, owned, and operated by the federal government. That was in recognition of the incredible resources that were within interior Alaska and the logistical challenges of getting those resources to market. And so the federal government constructed 500 miles of track across Alaska, up to Fairbanks in the interior, down to Tidewater in Seward, Alaska, and continued to own and operate the railroad until 1985, at which point, the railroad was certainly an outlier within the assets owned by the federal government. They weren't certain about continuing to own and operate this asset, and the state of Alaska recognized just how important this railroad was for our state and stepped up and purchased it. So we're managed by a 7-member board of directors that's appointed by the governor of Alaska. And our enabling statute requires us to be self-sustaining, separate and apart from the state budget. And we do participate in federal funding opportunities, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Again, that real estate reserve helps us meet those local match requirements for federal funds. So we do have that sort of state land grant But we are a separate legal and financial entity from the state of Alaska, although we were owned and mandated to serve the state. In total, between mainline sidings, yard track, we're a little under 700 miles of track. And uniquely, as we'll talk about in a bit, we offer both passenger and freight services. Annually, we move about 500,000 passengers across the state, and a little under 4 million tons of freight. And as mentioned, I'm going to quickly run through a few fun facts of how the Alaska Railroad is unique within the railroads operating in this country. So we are America's last and only full service railroad, meaning that we do operate both passenger and freight services. Given the topic of today's panel, we're going to primarily focus on our passenger services, but certainly freight is a very, very important business line for us and really meaningful for economic development across the state. We're also Alaska's only year-round rail service. So if anyone has had the opportunity to take a cruise up to Alaska, you may be familiar. There's another railroad that operates out of Skagway, Alaska, the White Pass and Yukon route. It's a great ride, highly recommend if you're ever in the area. But that is really a summer-only afternoon excursion type of deal. We do operate year-round intercity passenger rail, and that's unique for the Alaska Railroad within our state. Another, sort of superlative item that we offer the nation's last flag stop service. So there's an area north of a little town called Talkeetna where the train tracks break away from the highway, and this area is only accessible by train. And so we do offer a flag stop service where passengers can flag down the train at any point along this 55-mile stretch. And the conductor will stop. We'll offer baggage service out of the car to be able to help unload supplies and goods. A very unique service that really reflects the unique character of Alaska. And it's also worth highlighting, given the topic of today's panel, we do offer daily summer service to a number of, I think really pretty incredible protected public lands. Certainly Denali National Park is a bucket list destination for many people. Kenai Fjords National Park, just outside of Seward, Alaska. Also an enormous draw for folks to go whale watching and see glaciers. And then perhaps lesser known, but we certainly think of as being a hidden gem along our system. This picture shows the Spencer Glacier Whistle Stop, which is a remote area of the Chugach National Forest that is only accessible by train. And, this is a great opportunity for our passengers to be able to ride the train, get off the road system, get out to a pretty unique and pristine part of the state, and has been a great partnership for the railroad with the National Forest Service. Just to give an overview of the area in which we serve, you can see this covers about 500 miles of interior and south central Alaska. Anchorage there, kind of in the lower third of the map, is our hub. It's the largest city in Alaska and actually dates its roots to originally starting as a construction camp for the Alaska Railroad, but has now grown into the state's largest city and continues to be our headquarters. We go as far south as Seward, as far north as Fairbanks, and you can see stop at a number of destinations along the way that are population centers for Alaskans and also tend to be places where visitors have an interest in spending some time. And again, as we support Alaska's tourism and travel industry, the Alaska Railroad is a really useful way for guests who have an interest in spending time in multiple destinations to be able to really enjoy their travel time around the state. So some quick highlights of our passenger service and the benefit that the Alaska Railroad operating in this space brings to the state. We do, as I mentioned, operate year-round, regularly scheduled passenger rail service that's open to Alaskans, to leisure travelers, for folks who need a ride between these cities for whatever reason. In promoting Alaska and train travel, we really get the opportunity to act as an ambassador for the state of Alaska. We realize that very few people are going to travel all the way here just to go for a train ride. So we're really selling the state and the many destinations along our tracks as a, you know, a reason why you'd want to come up, spend a week traveling, taking the train in between these places, and spending time and money along the way. And to do that, we you know, have a sales and marketing team that is actively working to promote Alaska as a destination. We also partner really well with a wide variety of tour operators, as well as local accommodations, local excursion operators, again, with the goal of bringing passengers to the destinations that we serve and helping them have a good time when they get there. We're very complementary in that we're providing the transportation solution for these guests, but you know, they want things to do, they want places to eat, they need a place to stay. And so again, we partner very closely with a wide variety of local businesses to be able to help serve those customer needs. We also, as I think everyone's aware, we've got a robust cruise market in Alaska. And, you know, one thing about cruise ships, they certainly drive volume. So you've got, you know, thousands of passengers traveling on the same schedule. That can be a challenge sometimes. I mean, it's a great opportunity. It can be a challenge for a state like Alaska with a fairly sparse transportation network and limited highway system. And so the ability to move hundreds of those guests at a time by train is not only, we think, of value to those guests and the experience that they have on board the train, but also just a really helpful transportation solution. So we work closely with the cruise lines and their schedules to be able to help support their transportation needs, including operating charter trains that operate directly from the Alaska Railroad's Anchorage Airport Depot, and that will pick up those guests and move them directly down to cruise ports in Seward and Whittier, again, helping to get those guests where they need to go. And all of these activities in the passenger space, I mean, this is a very back of the envelope number, but you know, keeps an estimated 8,000 motor coaches off of Alaskan highways each summer, which again, for a state with as sparse a highway network as Alaska has, is a big benefit, not just to these guests, but for the locals who live here. Just very quickly, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity yet to come up to Alaska and take a ride on our train, we offer 2 classes of onboard passenger service. This is what we call adventure class, sort of comparable to our coach offerings. So 78-seat coach, large picture windows, comfortable reclining seats. But Gold Star service is what we consider our first class option. And this is where you'd have the glass dome ceiling, bar service on board. The tour guide featured here, they tend to spend more time in the Gold Star cars, but the onboard commentary is piped throughout the train. You know, again, just another feature of helping our guests to enjoy their travel time across Alaska. Again, as I mentioned, we partner with destinations and businesses all along the rail belt. So when the train pulls into the station, you know, our hope, and certainly what our reservations agents have tried to do, is to encourage our guests to get out and go flight seeing or rafting, you know, book a local lodge, whatever it's going to be, where they're going to, again, have a better experience and hopefully, you know, infuse a little more economic activity into the local area. All of this really just reflects a focus on the customer experience. So this is a shot of the onboard dining. Again, you know, our hope is that we're going to be not just, you know, solving the transportation problem of how you get from point A to point B, but that that travel time is really going to be a highlight of our guest experience while in the state. With all that said, that was a quick flyover of our rail operations, but I should note, in addition to all of the railroad assets that this organization owns, we also have a number of marine assets. So we own a freight barge dock in Whittier that serves as, you know, kind of our connection to the lower 48 rail network, with a rail barge that goes back and forth weekly. But in Seward, Alaska, we actually own 3 docks, and 2 of them have planned expansions in the next couple of years. One is actually under construction right now. And that's the asset I'll focus on today, which is our passenger cruise ship passenger dock in Seward. That's owned by the Alaska Railroad. The existing dock that just completed its last summer of service dated back to reconstruction efforts following the 1964 earthquake. So it had a long life, but that life had come to an end. And we are currently underway with a new $137 million dock and terminal facility that is going to continue to support cruise traffic into Seward and South Central Alaska. It's going to be a double berth pier with a floating barge dock. That's important in part for the efficiency of the construction season. So we just wrapped our 2025 cruise season with the old dock. Demolition is underway now. The floating barge components have been under construction off-site, but are being floated in. And the goal, we're on time and fingers crossed, feeling good about making it to our ribbon cutting in spring 2026. We're ready to greet the first cruise ship of the 2026 season. It's worth noting that the railroad did invest an additional almost $2 million from the original design to enhance the transfer span, which the original design was robust enough for cruise ship traffic, but given that we do serve both passenger and freight, wanted to bolster that a little for any off-season freight activities that this facility could support. Now, this whole infrastructure development really hinges on a 30-year agreement with Royal Caribbean Group. And that agreement is securing the debt for the Alaska Railroad bonds that we've issued to purchase this facility. So part of that agreement, Royal Caribbean Group will have a preferential berthing agreement for one side of the dock. But the railroad will own and operate this facility just the same as we have for years with the prior dock, as an open dock to other carriers. So certainly we will hope to be driving additional traffic to this dock and continuing to grow travelers coming into Seward, getting on the railroad and continuing their travels across the state. And wrapping up here just with a few stats for you all. As I mentioned earlier, we do on an annual basis carry about 500,000 passengers across the state. You can see obviously a dramatic dip in 2020 with the pandemic, but beyond that, relatively stable incremental growth. You'll see the two colors of the bar chart there. The blue component, which is a little over half, that represents folks who are booked directly on Alaska Railroad owned and operated trains. The yellow component, a little under half of our ridership, represents cruise train charters. So whether those are the direct airport transfers that I mentioned, or Holland American Princess Lines also own their own rail cars pulled by our locomotives, but those passengers are reflected in the yellow component. Just a very quick glance at our finances here. You can see in the pie chart that our passenger operations account for a little over 20% of our total revenue source. Freight, of course, is our largest business line, but passenger really important, both for the economic benefits that it brings to the state and certainly a non-negligible part of our revenue pie here. And again, being a state public corporation, all of our income at the end of the day is invested back into the infrastructure to ensure that Alaska continues to have a safe and healthy rail network for generations to come. That all goes, as I said, into our capital investment plan. A big focus of that is our bridge and track, just ensuring that we keep those really fundamental components healthy as we move forward. And you can see that we're in the midst of a pretty aggressive bridge rehabilitation plan underway to replace a little over 60 bridges in a 10-year period. So we are very appreciative of the federal funding opportunities to assist with that, as that undertaking would be well beyond the Alaska Railroad's ability to accomplish without that assistance. And our track rehab program. We have about 2 million ties total on our system. If we keep up with replacing about 50,000 a year, we're in a good place to keep things healthy. Again, we're active in the competitive grant space. For a very quick flyover on this, you'll see many of these are focused on bridge replacement efforts or other capital infrastructure. And with that, there's always more to say about the railroad, but I'll leave it there for this morning. Suffice to say that this rail system is very important for Alaska in a number of ways, but certainly plays a critical role in helping ensure that our travelers who are coming to Alaska, hoping to have a nice tourism and leisure experience, have a safe and enjoyable way to travel the state. And we work really hard to make sure that that's something that we can provide to our guests.
Thank you, Meghan. That was impressive. Tom, come on up here, please. Tom Eastmond is our next presenter. He's the president and co-founder of Dreamstar Lines. This is a company that's developing a vertically integrated passenger rail operation and manufacturing company. I will let him explain that a little bit more in depth. He's a recovering lawyer with experience in public law, real estate, and corporate transactions. He lives with his family on Balboa Island in Newport Beach, California, enjoys surfing, sailing, horseback riding, and sandcastle architecture. Let's have a round of applause, please, for Tom.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. It's good to be here. I wanted to describe something about our business model. We are a private company that started out when I was, as I said, a lawyer practicing public law with Best & Krieger, a firm in California and Washington, D.C. I had a lot of business up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and as I did today, I would fly up the night before and get a hotel. The alternative to that would be to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, fight my way through LAX, and spend about 6 hours for the allegedly 1.5 hour flight. And at some point, I thought, this would be really interesting to go old school and just take an overnight train. Well, of course, there isn't one. Working with Best & Krieger, I happened to represent a bunch of transit agencies who put me in touch with some people high up in Amtrak and transit, and discovered why there isn't and really isn't planned to be any sort of direct overnight service between the Bay Area and Southern California, or indeed, as we found out, in virtually anything shorter than about 750 miles, which is the area below which Amtrak has to have state support. So the idea kind of stuck with me, and almost as a side project, I just started trying to figure out if there's any reason this can't or shouldn't work. And lo and behold, the assumptions I was using for the business model kept coming in too conservative. And at some point, I discovered that my co-founder Joshua Dominic and I, who lived, as it happened, about 2 miles apart, was unbeknownst to me developing a similar project. So we met up, started, and short version is our model is to develop overnight rail passenger service on routes that are essentially one good night's sleep apart. A short haul flight is the most inefficient as far as carbon emissions, time, really. That 1.5 hour flight to the Bay Area is really 4 or 5 hours, or 6 if it's LAX. And it's not pleasant, right? You get where you're going, typically feeling like you've just put in a full day's work. And our secret sauce is that we look at routes that are, one, the right distance, about 8 to 12 hours. You need a good night's sleep, and then you've got 3 or 4 hours to play with, where you're still competitive with the time spent, the waking time spent on an air trip, and also connected by existing rail. And third, obviously, with enough potential ridership to make it work. We need about 75 passengers per route, per departure, for this to be viable. The main The main mountain to be climbed, we were always told, would be dealing with the Union Pacific. And since we were going to operate over the lightly traveled coastline up the coast, and we were pleasantly surprised at how creative and flexible and friendly they were to the idea of monetizing some of these underutilized assets. You know, some money is better than none money. You know, and they like to keep the coastline open as an overflow route, but most of the time it's just sitting there gathering rust. And so we came to a very creative understanding of how we can compensate them for the use of the track at a number that doesn't break our bank and allows us to be priced, we hope, competitive with air travel. Looking at the cost of Amtrak overnight accommodations, which sell out routinely, we think there's definitely demand at an air travel price point. So as we said, our first route would be Los Angeles to San Francisco, but we were looking around the country and in fact also internationally for routes that fit the criteria. Depending on how that LA San Francisco route pans out, you know, as that we figure if it works there, we can work. That's a great testing point because it's such a huge market, one of the largest travel markets in the country outside the Northeast Corridor, and probably the best one that's just that perfect 400 and change mile distance apart. So the idea is you go to bed in a private room and you basically board downtown LA or maybe Burbank or one of the close-in suburbs. You go to bed in a private room. There's a range of accommodations. You basically wake up, say at 7 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast and take a shower and get off, and there you are. I would have totally done that coming up here last night. It's a nice hotel that I think a lot of us stayed in. I made the mistake of, since this is a rail conference, I figured I couldn't just Uber from the airport. I had to, you know, get on some steel wheels on steel, and so I rode the Max, which is somebody explained to me as soon as I got off the plane has a bus bridge, so it took me about an hour and a half to get from the airport to here, but it was fun. So I've been assigned 10 minutes. I don't know if I've got more time because of somebody else presenting. We've, you know, one of the other sticking points has been the equipment problem. There obviously are not that many manufacturers interested in building a small number of rail cars. And we have looked into and have retained some advisors looking at the prospect of building our own custom built rail cars, which we intend to be modular. The idea is that we could build them for our own use, for our future expansion, and there'd also be potential use for transit agencies who are looking for smaller orders than the Stadlers and the Siemens and all are looking for. They're great if you want to buy 300 cars. We don't need quite that many to start with. And also Heritage Railways, and some other smaller operators. Basically, we want to be like, well, I can't say this out loud, but we want to be like Pullman without the antitrust. You know, we build the cars and then we service the onboard service. We want Dreamstar to basically be synonymous with a raised level of passenger rail experience, not just kind of the experiential Orient Express kind of super high volume or super high margin, but it is going to be upscale. We plan to have our basic accommodations, basic single accommodations, basically priced like airfare, but still private room, lie flat bed, access to showers and so forth. Bedrooms probably comparable to Amtrak's bedrooms, and then we've got some really exciting suites that have been designed by our design firm, DesignWorks, which is BMW's design firm, kind of like an modernized Art Deco look. And the idea is to have some like queen beds, like Murphy beds, larger private bathroom suite. And then we figured we would also, this isn't a picture of it, but we figured we'd also have just a big, spectacular, over-the-top residential suite just to impress people. The idea is to kind of work on the Tesla model, where you start with a more upscale project, and then after seeing what kind of demand you have there with the early adapters, then you expand out into some of the more interesting ideas that are being used in Europe for. That's the well, that was the upscale model, and that's the yes, we're dog friendly, since everybody seems to be into that. I'd be happy to take any questions. What's that? Okay, and so I'll just thank you for listening, and look forward to talking to you.
Thank you, Thomas. We're going to hop across the ocean now. Hannah, I hope you'll forgive me if I don't pronounce this correctly, but Hannah McDonnell is with Gloucestershire Community Rail Partnership in Stroud, England. She's the executive director, creating impact-driven connections between communities, business, and built environment. Her expertise lies in developing sustainable solutions that reflect local voices while delivering measurable outcomes. Let's welcome Hannah.
Thank you very much, Senator, for presenting me and introducing me. It's an absolute privilege to be here. I wish very much I could be in the room. Wonderful to feel the energy already. Something that really drives me in my role is the passion for rail. And ultimately, rail is about people, isn't it? Connecting people, and people feel very strongly about it. And I feel that very strongly in my rail. So thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm going to present a case study that is in the United Kingdom. As you said, in Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, we cover both counties. And those counties have some very key sort of magnet destinations in them. You've probably heard of the Cotswolds National Landscape and the Cotswolds, which is a very key sort of destination for tourists and visitors. Also Oxford, obviously the university, there's Bicester Village, there's various locations that are really strong pulls across those two counties that we cover as a team. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of those case studies in the Cotswolds further on in my presentation, just sort of to give a bit of context, because obviously you're not here and maybe none of you know about Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, and why should you? But basically we have two very semi-rural counties with 9 rail stations in Gloucestershire and 23 in Oxfordshire. And some of those communities living in those areas are seriously living in what we call transport poverty. So there's very limited access to rail, whereas others might live in sort of central hubs and urban areas like Gloucester and Oxford. So just to give a bit of context, I was really interested to hear the previous presentation and the shift in sort of patronage on the rail in the rail sector. We've seen a very similar thing in England, where the shift is very much towards leisure travel. It now represents around 70% of travel on the operators that we work with in Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, and a real shift from what was previously the commuter passenger. So a real opportunity there for operators and for us as communities in terms of economic development. So a delight to be here. Please, would you move me on to the next slide? So this slide really just is to sort of talk about what community rail is, because you're probably all thinking, what is community rail? Even in England, people are like, I haven't heard of it. I live and breathe it, obviously, and my team do too, and we feel really passionately about it. But I just thought I'd give a little bit of background before I drill into what we're doing in the Cotswolds. And basically, our work is to strengthen our community's relationship with train travel and transport in our region. And we do this by engaging with and listening to our community and visitors to understand their needs, thoughts and opinions on travelling by rail and other sustainable modes. And by working with industry stakeholders and local government, we aim to create a local transport system that is inclusive, positive and sustainable today, tomorrow and for the future. So that's a very big vision I know, but actually it's something that we're working really well towards alongside our industry partners and across the country. Next slide, please. So just to kind of give you some context, it's not just us on our own doing that in Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire. There are over 70 partnerships nationally. We're part of a community rail family that was born around 20 years ago in a place called Cornwall and Devon, where lines were threatened with closure. And communities came out and said, this is going to really change our lives. Our young people won't be able to get to their schools, their education, work will be limited, we'll have a negative impact of outward migration. And the community really rose up and spoke around what the impact would be if those lines were closed. And the Department for Transport noticed the difference that made and responded to it. And now those lines never closed. And they're really bringing a lot of tourists into those areas, and they really realised what community rail could do. So from there, community rail was born. So all of our work across the 76 partnerships across the country is underpinned by the Department for Transport's community rail strategy, which hopefully you can see has got 4 pillars. And each of those community rail partnerships adheres to those pillars. One is promoting a voice for the community. The other is promoting sustainable and healthy travel. Then we have supporting social and economic development and bringing communities together to support diversity and inclusion. So every single partnership is different. It's grassroots. It looks at what local communities need. Like I said, in Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, we have a very semi-rural county with lots of transport poverty, and we build an evidence base around what our communities need and what changes need to be made to serve them better. And we report that back to our rail industry partners who we sit around the table with. So this strategy helps us to sit around the table. So we all have steering groups with the rail industry, community partners, local authorities, transport planners, and have those conversations around what local communities need and also create those solutions. Now, this might seem a little bit abstract because this is going on in Britain, but I really want you to feel inspired by this because I've seen and been supporting some other community groups in both in the Netherlands and in Jamaica who want to set up community rail partnerships. It's a really strong movement that could really transform what can happen with rail connections. Next slide, please. So in terms of that partnership, the kind of the sweet spot that we create is that mixing together across the sectors. Because we're sitting at the table with the rail industry, our community organisations, the voices of what local people need, tourism organisations, businesses, we can really align and find those places to drive really positive change locally. So it really is substantial. It is that sort of classic word around collaboration, but community rail really does support and creates that bridge between the rail industry and what local people need. So really grassroots, really granular around what is needed locally, responding to what's needed locally, and influencing our industry partners to understand what they can do to serve their populations better, and where possible to make the changes in that direction. Next, I'm going to go on to talk about a case study because there's a lot of work we do, and afterwards, if you want to look at our impact reports or our websites, you will see a lot of the different programs that we run. But on the next slide, please, I start drilling down into the Cotswolds, and some of you will have heard of it. I imagine you have. It's a real sort of draw. It's a big magnet destination in Gloucestershire, and it bridges Oxfordshire as well. It's a £1 billion industry, providing 12,800 direct jobs and 23 million visitors per year. The issue here is that 21 million of those are day trippers. So we really do have an issue around over tourism coming to sort of hotspot, honeypot destinations that really do struggle. And 81% of those trips are made by car. So we work really closely with the Cotswold National Landscape, who are the custodians of that landscape, that wonderful landscape, and trying to support them to shift away from that sort of draw of people coming by car and encourage people to come by train and to use integrated transport. So promoting those links between bus, train, walking and cycling. You'll see a little map on that slide on the left side, which is one of the resources that we produce, which encourages people to think about, how could I connect the train with cycling, with walking, with buses? So we work really closely with all those partners to understand how can we draw them here without the car, because there's a massive commitment to reduce those visitors' emissions in the Cotswolds that we can help support them to achieve. Next slide, please. So in terms of our approach, like I say, we are grassroots. So we look and see what the problem is locally. And specifically in the Cotswolds, we looked at the fact that there was limited integration in transport between rail and bus to get to those nature sites, to get to the Cotswolds. And those barriers were preventing people from shifting over from car to public transport, and also meant that less people would be able to access it locally. So a lot of what we look at is also leisure, not just tourism, because also tourism can be very localized. And we mustn't forget our local domestic tourism and people who locally move around, maybe not that far, but there's still tourists and visitors in their local spaces. So making sure that those sort of people who maybe are not feeling that they can get there or not confident to get there can get there. So we just noticed there's a huge amount of opportunity there to promote and integrate those links between rail, bus, walking and cycling. So people can really think about, how could I make this adventure? The previous speaker was talking about that excitement to travel by train. I think that's really what we're trying to invite, is that appetite for traveling by train and the experience of getting to the destination and that being part of the journey. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we approach this, just so to sort of bring it to life, we worked out the partnerships with people like the National Trust, Cotswold National Landscape, some key destinations in those places, and had extensive sort of engagement sessions with our county council, our train operators, bus operators and community transport providers and local authorities to find out how we could create something that really made a difference locally, and established a collective vision on how to enable sustainable access to those places and cultivate travel confidence for local communities. Next slide, please. So in the end, we as that bridging organisation, as a community rail partnership, are the ones who try to influence change. We're that trusted industry partner. We're a reliable local voice. We create local data and evidence that then can be presented in a business case to create funding, to be able to source, to be able to drive those services that are needed for what's actually needed on the ground, rather than just discovered on a desktop or hypothetically. We provide leisure products. We develop those products that can influence consumer behaviours, and we strengthen the case for rail, influencing both change in the industry and for consumers. And on the right side there, you'll see Train Tripper, which is one of our products. The next slide is a short video. It's just 3 minutes long, and it just brings to life some of the work that we do. This is a project that was funded by the Department for Transport and worked across 2 community rail partnerships.
Leaving the city centre and being brought to this place I didn't even know existed. Something I'm not going to forget in a while.
These trips fill me with confidence, you know?
Everything's so fast-paced in the city, so it's so nice to like leave there. Going into nature was like a massive breath of fresh air.
It's quite hard for me to interact with people my own age. As a result, I tend to not make many friends very easily and stay inside a lot.
Going outside or getting public transport has been difficult for me because there's a lot of things that have happened in my childhood that have made me kind of shy away from socializing, things like that.
It's helped me a lot, the movement trip. It's helped me release some of my stress, my anxiety, my depression.
I'm not good at traveling alone because I very often get lost, I get stressed out. So being able to have someone who could like talk me through how to get on the train, off the train, all that stuff, like guiding me through the whole like, oh yeah, find a seat, we're going to this platform now. It was cool.
I find it hard to find people on my wavelength or similar circumstances. This trip has been really helpful because there's also people that understand and we don't even need to like communicate that because it's just like there, you know?
It's worth pushing yourself a bit just to come on this trip and experience all the experiences they give you, talk to all your peers. And even if you don't want to talk to your peers, it's worth it just to be around other people.
I would 100% recommend these trips. Even if they're going for a difficult state. I was a bit nervous at the start, but it just helps me a lot.
Beforehand, I would have never got a train by myself, and going with a group has definitely made me want to try again, but individually, like independently going, and I never would have done that before.
It's been quite a journey. They've helped me a lot, like with life, and it's been a huge difference for me. Yeah, it's gained a lot of confidence.
By the time I got back, I was firmly happy. I had a great time. I had new phone numbers in my phone. I had new friends. The trip was I just felt very happy and fulfilled and a bit tired afterwards, so it's great.
The movement trip has really helped me get support in my social life. Yeah, because I've never really had that support network in the first place. To me, it's just extremely therapeutic to go out and explore, to challenge new experiences, like to get on public transport, to go to somewhere I've never been before. It's just really therapeutic to me, I guess.
Thank you very much. So the next slide is just my final slide, really. I hope that inspired you. I think there's plenty. Oh. It was good, but we don't need to hear it again.
I think you might be muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Nope.
Okay, well, it's the end anyway. I can't it doesn't seem to unmute.
I think we're having some technical difficulties here, Hannah. Tom?
We're working on getting her audio back. Sorry about that,
Okay.
Hannah.
No
The
problem.
YouTube video stopped everything.
No problem.
Apologies. It should be working now, Hannah. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I know that YouTube can do that, so thank you for solving that. Well, I hope that was an inspiration. My last slide is just really to just sort of inspire. I think it's all about inspiring communities, visitors, tourists, and our leisure passengers to travel by train. I hope that you've enjoyed that. And I do think anything's possible. Why not bring community rail to you as well? Thank you very much for listening.
All right, Tom, we did pretty good. We're only 5 minutes over.
Yeah,
So-
we'll take a 5-minute break and come back to talk about the Big Sky North Coast.
Perfect. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.